The next Hunter x Hunter game is Hunter no Keifu, or Hunter's Genealogy, and is another Konami Game Boy Color game. The game opens with a long dialogue section during which you will create a character using extremely limited customization options. There are some dialogue choices during the opening, but the choices made don't appear to make any meaningful differences. Eventually, you enter into the Hunter exam alongside characters from the source material, and will realize the game is a tactical role-playing game. In a frankly terrible decision by the game designers, you are forced to utilize turn-based, tile-limited movements for the first portion of the exam, which, true to the manga, is a foot race. This means the first several minutes of gameplay involve monotonously choosing two actions in a menu, which should probably be movement most of the time for the sake of keeping up with the crowd, so as to not get lost in a fairly large map without any distinguishing features, then tediously choosing the tiles to move over repeatedly. Oh, and waiting for the screen to load each tile strip every time you get near the edge of the screen. Compounding matters are characters that will stop your movement dead in its tracks if you happen to accidentally try to move through the same tile as them. To be fair, there are other options in the action menu, those being search, hide, item, talk, and attack. Search reveals question marks on tiles, which when walked over give the player an item, and this can be used in this opening section, as there are hidden items scattered around. The other options are fairly self-explanatory, although items features a submenu where you can synthesize two items into one. Now, you might be thinking that the game will open up and be more interesting after this initial section, but you'd be wrong. After each exam section is a bit of a dialogue with characters where you occasionally get to make a dialogue choice, but inevitably leads to the next part of the exam. The second exam section involves you searching for food for gourmet hunters. Now, the thing you are supposed to do here, which undoubtedly would be a stopping point if unable to read Japanese, is combine meat you find randomly in tiles with the search function with another type of food you also find randomly in tiles. However, after consulting some Japanese websites discussing the game, noting one of the sites was just several different people's accounts of how disappointing the game was, I was greeted by the revelation that combining the food items is glitched and sometimes just plain doesn't work. Luckily, there are several items you can combine with the meat, and if one doesn't work, another might. Once that has been completed, you move on to the third portion of the exam, which is somehow more tedious than the first. Here you have to use the search function to locate traps and then either walk over to disable them or avoid them in a massive room. Oh, and the search function doesn't quite reach the limit of the amount of tiles you can walk, so you also need to purposely walk one less tile each turn to avoid accidentally stepping on an unsearched tile. Upon reaching the southeast corner, the section is complete. Believe it or not, the next part of the exam ups the tedium to a whole new level. In this section, you must find and repeatedly attack your target until you do over 40 damage, so that they no longer move, and then you walk up to them and take their nameplate, thereby completing the section. You are not told which character is your target, but from what I read, supposedly it depends on who talks to you in the scene beforehand. If Gon, Kiroa, Kurapika, or Leorio talks to you, your target will be Hanzo or Tompa. If Hisoka talks to you, your target will be Gon, Kiroa, Kurapika, or Leorio. And if Hanzo or Tompa talks to you, your target will be Hisoka. This held true for my single playthrough of the game, but there's no way I'm going to verify all the possibilities. Also, this section of the game practically requires you to have found a ranged weapon earlier in the game to not go insane, as you will be repeatedly attacking characters that keep moving until you've done enough damage. There's also a sort of mini-game where you have to hit the A button while the cursor is over the target when you attack, but that gets old real quick. The final test pits you against a single opponent in battle, and it seems like the opponent is based on your dialogue choices immediately prior, but I'm not replaying the game to find out. The final battle consists of you repeatedly attacking your opponent while they occasionally move around the room until the game ends. That's it. They don't attack you or anything, you just hit them until the credits roll. I should also mention the game has a versus CPU mode where you load a character and choose which exam portion to take on, as well as a versus other player and trade mode accessed with the Game Boy Link cable, but why you would subject a friend to this game is well beyond my scope of understanding. At this point, you may be wondering why what has been the longest Hunter x Hunter review up to this point has been dedicated to the worst of the Hunter x Hunter games thus far. And that's simply because I don't want anyone to get the impression that there's any redeeming qualities to be found here. I have described the entire gameplay experience. It is not worth playing.